Week 6 is over, folks. We had the incredible Red River Rivalry, or should I say Red River Shootout. You know, after all, that is the name that they used to go by for that game. Boy, was it a good one. Hey, we cannot wait till next year, when that game is an SEC game. It was definitely better than last year's game, that's for sure. Last year was a incredible blowout. Not an exciting game to watch at all, but this year, that's what the rivalry is all about right there. We learned some stuff, folks. We learned some stuff. You know, it should be a recurring segment every week now. What did we learn this weekend? What did we learn? I may use that next week as we're here and as we're going to recap Week 6, a pretty good Week 6. We're going to look at our SEC slate, and we'll talk about the Red River Rivalry. Of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't do that. And, hey, the East, we pretty much know what's going to happen in the East. The West, you know, this week, we knew we'd learn some things there, specifically with Alabama and A&M. And as always, when you think Alabama's going to lose, when you think Alabama's going to have a bad game, when you're counting them out, or when you're hoping for a miracle to happen, Nick Saban is going to show up and be ready to just completely push all that aside, to say, hey, you know, I don't care what any of y'all say. We're Alabama, and we're going to keep on trucking no matter what. A&M couldn't get it done. They couldn't get it done. So Alabama lives to play another week at the top of the SEC. Look, all they got to do is just be Alabama. We say this every week. They got to be Alabama. But, you know, maybe that game is not as much as, you know, Alabama shouldn't be who we're talking about. We should be talking about Texas A&M, the coaching and all that stuff. It's getting ugly over in College Station, but we've got some recaps for you today, and we're going to get right into that here. We're not going to waste too much time, and I'll start out by pulling the SEC schedule up for you beautiful people watching, or you may be listening to us via Spotify or however, and we do enjoy that. We try to get this up as quick as we can. But let's not waste any time. This is your SEC recap for Week 6. We're going to start from the top there. Number 20, Kentucky, and number 1, Georgia. You know, I said that this was going to be a sort of a gauge on the East, because I believe, obviously, Georgia is number 1, and they should be there. But Kentucky was a close 2, and we would really see this week what Kentucky can do. Can they surpass Georgia? Their schedule really hasn't been that impressive so far. I say either team, but Kentucky's specifically. Kentucky's schedule hasn't been that impressive. So this is where we're going to really learn if they can compete with Georgia for that East title, and we see there Georgia gets the win, 51-13. The leaders in that game in passing was Carson Beck from Georgia, 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. Ray Davis from Kentucky was the leading rusher in the game, 15 carries for 59 yards. And Brock Bowers, of course, who else would it be? The tight end for Georgia, 7 receptions, 132 yards, 1 touchdown. That's your stat leaders in that game. We'll cover that one a little bit later in the show. Up next, you had number 11 Alabama facing Texas A&M going to College Station. That's the 2:30 CBS kick. The Tide rolled. They started slow again. The game wasn't pretty, but they got the win, 26-20. Texas A&M's horrible coaching, horrible clock management did them in, especially at the end of that game. They held up a good majority of the game. And I can applaud them for that. But they just couldn't get it done. And look, that's something that I know they are going to take on into the season. Look, Texas A&M's 4-2 right now. What their road looks like, I don't know. But Jimbo's on that hot seat, no doubt. I mean, and I say that every week. I feel like a broken record, but that's just how it is. The stat leaders in this game, Jalen Milroe, quarterback for Alabama, 321 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Moss for Texas A&M, the running back, had 16 carries, 49 yards, and 1 touchdown. And Burton, wide receiver for Alabama, had 9 receptions, 197 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that game. As we roll on here, Arkansas and number 16 Ole Miss. This was a game at night under the lights in Oxford. Ole Miss gets the win, 27-20. They score late, and they keep Arkansas from scoring on a great defensive play. Still on the ball away right there at the end to seal the game. And for this game in particular, Ole Miss just needed to come off of that momentum that they had versus LSU. They had the bad loss to Alabama, and I say bad loss. Bad loss as in there was a lot of hope that they could win that game, but they fell short. They didn't have a good game, and that's how that went. But they took that energy from that LSU, that big LSU win. They brought it into this week, and they had a good win over the Razorbacks that they've had trouble with in the past. And we brought this up last week. There's been many games where Ole Miss has had, I don't want to just say they haven't had very good luck, let's just say. There's been crazy games. They mentioned some of these in the broadcast, but certain years it's just been that Arkansas just found a way. Nothing special. They just found a way to beat Ole Miss, regardless if Ole Miss was a better team or not. And, I guess it's hopeful. The great thing about this game was it's in Oxford because Ole Miss does not do well on the road in that game. But Ole Miss gets the win. The stat leaders, KJ Jefferson, and that's a shocker, honestly. 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Ulysses Bentley, the fourth for Ole Miss, the running back, 13 carries, 94 yards, 1 touchdown. And Washington, the tight end for Arkansas, 7 receptions, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So that's that. Let's just move on right here. Let's keep trucking on along. You had number 23 LSU and number 21 Missouri. LSU coming off that loss against Ole Miss, like I told you just a moment ago. In Missouri, another one of the East hopefuls, right there with Kentucky. Was Kentucky going to make the move, or was Missouri going to make the move? Well, both of them fell this week. Missouri could not get it done. LSU wins 49-39, but you had Cook for quarterback for Missouri. Had 411 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Diggs, a running back for LSU, had 24 carries, 134 yards, and 1 touchdown. And Burden, the third, wide receiver for Mizzou, 11 receptions and 149 yards. That was a good game. LSU, they came in and they really came back in the fourth quarter, and they scored a lot of points, and they scored 22 points in the fourth quarter to come back to beat a Missouri team. So now if you're Missouri and you're Kentucky, you're both still pretty much battling for second place in the East. Pretty much Georgia's got it locked, honestly. Now, crazy things could happen, but Kentucky has the head-to-head loss against Georgia, so Missouri, it's your move. It's your move. So we move on down. The only SEC out-of-conference game from this weekend was Mississippi State in Western Michigan. Now, Mississippi State, they've had some woes. They've been kind of shaky this year, but they get a good win, 41-28 over Western Michigan at home. Wolf for Western Michigan had 262 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Davis, running back from Mississippi State, had 10 carries, 65 yards, 1 touchdown. And Womack, wide receiver for Western Michigan, had 12 receptions and 113 yards. We'll talk about this game here in just a little while, as well as some of these other ones. We'll just look over some brief stats here as we get further on into the show. The final game in your SEC slate is Vanderbilt and Florida. Florida kind of bouncing back a little bit after starting pretty shaky. They're not too bad. They've got a lot of work to do, but they hopefully they can find a way to string up a good season here. They're 4-2 after this game. They beat Vanderbilt 38-14. And just a few stats from here. Seals, quarterback for Vanderbilt, was 276 yards, 2 touchdowns. Johnson Jr., running back for Florida, had 18 carries, 135 yards, and 1 touchdown. And Shepard, wide receiver for Vanderbilt, had 3 receptions, 107 yards, and 1 touchdown. And Vanderbilt is 2-5, and it's just a tough road. You know, they beat this Florida team last year, and they couldn't get it done here. Vanderbilt is tough for them. They've just got a tough road. What their schedule holds, can they become bowl eligible? I don't know. As the weeks go on, I can only give them so many chances, and this was one of their chances right here to beat this Florida team. I didn't expect them to do many great things this year. I didn't predict them to win any conference play, but I knew that a game like Florida was a game that they could possibly win, at least get really close, and they didn't even get close here. Again, Florida wins 38-14, and that is your SEC, your quick SEC scoreboard, your recap from Week 6. Now, we talked about that, and we'll get into this game in a moment, but I want to go ahead and pull this up here. This right here, talked about it just a moment ago, the Red River Rivalry. Number 12, Oklahoma, and number 3, Texas. They, like I said, had a great game. And I'm so excited for this to be an ACC game. Again, I think they should change. First of all, again, and I hate to stress on this time and time again, but Red River Rivalry, say that 5 times fast. A lot of people, I can barely say it 1 time, much less 5. Red River Shootout. Maybe they could come up with a new name for this game coming into the SEC, kind of rejuvenate it a little bit. Not that it needs to be rejuvenated, but just, play with the name a little bit to fit its new home in the SEC, its new purpose in the SEC, because, you never know. In a few years, this may have major ramifications in the conference. Oklahoma, coming off of a terrible loss last year, like I mentioned, they came back, and this was a shootout. As you can see the breakdown right there on your screen, for those of you watching, the breakdown of each quarter in this game. They both started 7-7 in the first quarter. Then Texas scores 10. They go into halftime, 20-17, right? 20-17, they go into halftime. Oklahoma comes out. They score another 7 to make it 27-20 right there in the third quarter. And as they go into the fourth, Texas scores 10, but Oklahoma comes back. They score a touchdown. They further their lead there, and the game's over 34-30. And there was some good play. We'll get into the stats of this game here in just a moment, actually. Why don't we go ahead since we're on this topic here, before we move on to the SEC breakdown of the SEC games this year, this week I should say, why don't we go ahead? Let's look at some stats. Let's break down this game right here. We'll tell you a little bit about it. Dylan Gabriel. We'll start at quarterback. Dylan Gabriel for Oklahoma was 23 of 38, 235 yards, a 7.5 average, and 1 touchdown. He had a 92.8 quarterback rating. Quinn Ewers for Texas, on the other hand, was 31 of 37, 346 yards, 9.4 average, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. He had a 75.9 quarterback rating. Some other notable stats here. For rushing, Dylan Gabriel for Oklahoma had 14 carries, 113 yards, 8.1 average per carry. That's 1 touchdown, His longest run was 44 yards. Tawee Walker had 15 carries, 46 yards, 3.1 yards per carry average, 2 touchdowns. His longest was 12. Now, for Texas, they pretty much had most of their success on the ground from Jonathan Brooks. He had 22 carries, 129 yards, 5.9 average, 1 touchdown. His longest was 31. You also had C.J. Baxter that had the second most carries, but only 7 for 18 yards. No touchdowns for him. So just if we're just looking, and this is something that I'm going to ask again after I read off some more stats, but think about this. As we're going through here, you tell me on paper, if we took these touchdowns completely out, if we took the touchdown column out on these stats, tell me who you thought won this game. Because to me, it's pretty close, honestly. It's really close. Let's go to receiving. Let's look at the receiving. Farouk for Oklahoma had 5 receptions, 130 yards, 26 average yards per reception. He didn't have any touchdowns, but his longest was 43, a good contributor in this game, because in a game like this, everything counts, honestly. Drake Stoops had 4 receptions, 55 yards, 13.8 average for no touchdowns. 28 yards was his longest catch. For Texas, Jordan Whittington, 10 receptions, 115 yards, 11.5 average, no touchdowns. His longest was 28. Xavier Worthy, we said last week they're going to have to get the ball to him. He was a playmaker. If they want to win this game, they got to get the ball to him, allow him to make plays. Well, he didn't make too many plays. He didn't get a touchdown. He only had 8 receptions, 108 yards. His longest was 39. And another noteworthy one here, Gunnar Helm, 4 receptions for 67 yards, 16.8 average, 25 was his longest. Again, I'm not going through every one of them, just the noteworthy ones from this game. Now, let's go to the defense here. Now, this is where you see a little bit of difference. Okay? This is where maybe you can see where the tide was shifted a little bit. Quinn Ewers has 1 fumble that he lost. For Oklahoma's defense, they had 5 sacks and a total of 10 tackles for loss. To Texas's 1 sack, 5 total tackles for loss. And that right there is a big difference. They was getting to Quinn Ewers. So Oklahoma had 4 players getting those sacks. That's a big deal there. 2 interceptions. Oklahoma's defense came up with 2 interceptions in the game, 1 by Dolby and 1 by Williams. Is that right there? Does that right there make a difference? Because honestly, I think it does. I think your defense is very important in a game like this, honestly. Because if you can't stop somebody like Quinn Ewers, if you can't stop a good receiver like Xavier Worthy, then you're going to have a problem like you did last year. Now, I think this Oklahoma team is better than they were last year, but you struggle with that issue if you can't make those plays on defense. And they did that. And like I say, let me ask you again, who won this game? If you take the touchdown column out and you're just basing your opinion on all the other stats, on paper, who won this game? I think it's tough to determine, but I think you can see where Oklahoma had the edge. Now, again, I don't have you can see there's not a total of turnovers, but you can count fumbles lost and things like that. So you can count. Oklahoma had 2 interceptions on defense. Texas had none. Oklahoma fumbled one time, but they recovered it. Quinn Ewers fumbled one time. He lost the football. But, hey, that's Oklahoma and Texas. It was a great game to watch. Early, it was electric. I just love the atmosphere there. Just the way it looks on TV with the crowd split 50-50. I love that. It is a great tradition there at the Red River Rivalry, and that is that game. And we put that to the side, and we look forward to next year where they are in the SEC. Come on, Texas and Oklahoma, come on. But, and I have another thing to mention later when we're talking about these conferences, because the question that I have is, and the question that I hear is, can Texas and Oklahoma compete in the SEC? Or will they be a middle-of-the-road team? Will they think they're going to compete, but when they're facing this tough SEC competition every week, are they going to be able to keep it up? Is it a mistake? I don't think it is. But stay tuned. We'll talk about that right after this. Now let's move on right here. Let's look back. We got Alabama and A&M to talk about real quick. Let's look at these stats here. So, first of all, the number one note that I have for this game, and out of everything, questionable coaching from A&M. Imagine that. But let's look at what the players did. Let's break down these statistics here. You got Jalen Milroe, 21 of 33, 321 yards, 9.7 average, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, to Max Johnson's 14 of 25, 239 yards, 9.6 average, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Neither quarterback was just terrible. They both had interceptions, and they could have had better days on completions, but, I mean, you've got 2 weaker quarterbacks, which is kind of unusual for Alabama, and I don't know. Texas A&M is hit or miss in the quarterback department. Rushing. Jace McClellan for Alabama had 12 carries, 45 yards. His longest was 15, no touchdowns. Roydell Williams, 6 carries, 9 yards, 1.5 average. And there's not much. That's really it, honestly, for Alabama in rushing the ball. Jalen Milroe's on here, but I'm not even going to bother to entertain that stat because he has negative yardage because of sack yards. But for Texas A&M, Levon Moss had 16 carries, 49 yards, 3.1 average, 1 touchdown. Amari Daniels, 4 carries, 17 yards, 4.3 average, no touchdowns for him. If we move on to receiving, now this is where Alabama made things happen. Jermaine Burton, 9 receptions, 197 yards on 9 receptions. That's a 21.9 average yards per reception. That's incredible. And 2 touchdowns. His longest was 46 yards. Isaiah Bond had 7 receptions, 96 yards. It's great production by these receivers. 13.7 average. That's 1 touchdown. 52 yards was his longest reception. That's where Alabama. They didn't go to the ground in this game. Nope. They did what worked. They figured out what was going to work, and they did it. Now, on the other side, Smith for Texas A&M had 4 receptions, 88 yards, 22 yard average, 37 long, no touchdowns. Moose Muhammad III, 2 receptions, 49 yards, no touchdowns. You had Jake Johnson with 4 receptions, 45 yards, 1 touchdown. His longest was 22. He also had Evan Stewart in there that had 3 receptions, 46 yards, 15.3 average, no touchdowns, and his longest was 32 yards. Now, if we continue on here, and let's take a look at defense. Again, this is what matters right here. This is what matters. Let's look at it. Alabama had 5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, to Texas A&M's 6 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. You know what I noticed in this game? You know what I saw in this game? And I seen this in the contest versus Ole Miss as well. And technically you see the same thing versus Jaden Daniels at LSU. If you try to get back there and sack him, if you try to get back and force him out of the pocket, you think, oh, we're going to get pressure on him. Like, that's the thing that we got to do. But if you're going to get pressure on him, just like Milroe here, if you're going to get pressure on Milroe, you have to sack him. You got to force him to actually throw the ball and make a bad throw. You can't allow him to scramble, to have more time to either make a play or either through the air or with his feet. Because on one hand, if there's nobody downfield, he can evade the tacklers. He can evade the defensive line that's barreling down on him, the linebackers that are barreling down on him, and he can make a play right there to the wide open flat or the wide open middle of the field. If you don't have anybody watching him, and your corners and your defensive backs are leading their receivers way on down the field, he's got this big running lane here. And he's going to make use of it, just like Jalen Daniels at LSU. They're going to make use of that open field there. Either that or you're giving him more room. You're giving him more time to scramble, to make a decision downfield, more time for the receivers to get away from their defenders and be able to get open. And that's what Alabama did. You know, I mentioned this thing about questionable coaching for A&M. The clock management at the end of this game. Let's look. Let's do something here. Let's break down the quarters here. Alabama and Texas A&M go to. They're tied up in the first quarter. Going into the second quarter, they're tied 3-3. Second quarter, Texas A&M gets 14 points. They go into halftime 17-10. That's you have confidence. If you're going in there and you're beating Nick Saban at halftime, you have confidence, and that's. But I don't really know. I don't know. Do you want to be on that side or do you want to be on the other side? Because do you want to be winning at halftime and have that momentum going into the second half, or do you want to be losing to Alabama? And just imagine what Nick Saban is saying to his players in the other locker room, knowing that he's building a fire under them that's not going to be extinguished until 0-0 at the end of the fourth quarter. But Texas A&M comes out, they can't do anything in the third quarter. Alabama comes up, they score 14. They make it 24-17 going into the fourth quarter. They get the lead right back. Then A&M, in a terrible fourth quarter performance, blunder after blunder, coaching mistake after coaching mistake, failing to have time management again and again. Jimbo Fisher just proves that he's not worthy of what they're paying him over there in College Station. If oil prices go up here, if gas prices go up here pretty soon, you'll know that Jimbo Fisher's been put on the chopping block. That was somewhat of a joke. It wasn't really funny, I don't guess, was it? Oil money. Oil money talks. I've said that before. Oil money talks. So, Texas A&M, they need a touchdown to take the lead from Bama. What do? They can't do it. They kick a field goal. Why? Why would they do that? Okay. Well, they do that, but I failed to mention this here. They get the ball back deep in their own territory. Max Johnson how do you even put your team in this position? He's standing in the end zone. He throws the ball trying to save the safety, right? And due to an intentional grounding penalty, they get a safety. That is like the thing that you, out of all the things that you can't do in that situation, that's what they do. That's what happens. That's terrible. And then later, when you need a touchdown, you play the conservative game. When you're playing Alabama and you kick a field goal, not very smart, not very wise. No excuse, honestly. But you know what? That is not the worst blunder. I've got a doozy for you. You all probably know what I'm about to say. We're going to talk about Miami. We're going to talk about Mario Cristobal, Georgia Tech getting a. Hey, it's a win. It's on the win column. Don't matter how that game ended. Georgia Tech won that game. So we'll get to that in a minute. And that is Texas A&M and Alabama. Moving on, we got Ole Miss and Arkansas. In Oxford, the Razorbacks coming to town to face the 16-ranked Ole Miss Rebels. Like I said, it was 27-20 Ole Miss. And look, Jackson Dart had a good game. He was beaten up. He had a good game. I like to say that. I just have confidence in the kid. He struggled, though. He got hurt early in the game, and you could tell he wasn't the same. But let me tell you, that rushing game has been coming back, and they're pretty balanced rushing and passing in this game. Here's some stats real quick. KJ Jefferson for Arkansas, 25-39, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Jackson Dart, 16-25, 253 yards, 1 touchdown. Rushing, you had Raheem Sanders. Rocket Sanders is, most people referred to him as for Arkansas. 8 carries, 15 yards, and you had KJ Jefferson, 17 carries, 11 yards. Of course, you have sack yardage and all that mess in there. They could not run the ball. That was obviously not in their game plan. For Ole Miss, Ulysses, the duo. These are 2 great players here. Ulysses Bentley is a star. Ulysses Bentley IV had 13 carries, 94 yards, 7.2 average yards per carry. That's 1 touchdown. 32 was his longest run. Quinshon Judkins, 18 carries, 65 yards, 3.6 average yards per carry. That's 1 touchdown. 34 was his longest. Man, Jackson Dart's there, but he didn't rush too much. You could tell after his injury early in the game that he wasn't the same. I think he's going to be okay though going into the next week. It's a great time to have a bye week. You had a couple players get shaken up in this game. The bye week could not come at a better time, honestly. Moving on to receiving, Ty Washington for Arkansas had 7 receptions, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns, 12.9 average. Also, you had Andrew Armstrong, which had 8 receptions, 86 yards, no touchdowns. 21 was his longest attempt, or reception, I should say. And then Rocket Sanders catching the ball here, 3 receptions for 26 yards. You had several other players here that had catches that did some contributing here. But basically, I mean, that was all that they had. Like I said, they did not have rushing in their game plan, and maybe that was due to a good Ole Miss defensive line. Now for Ole Miss, though, they had Jordan Watkins with 7 receptions, 86 yards, no touchdowns. His longest was 19. Trey Harris, 1 reception, 26 yards, 26 average, obviously, and his longest was 26. Dayton Wade, 4 receptions, 23 yards, and 1 touchdown. That's a good trio right there. Along with Quinshon and Ulysses Bentley, which had some minuscule receptions there, but their main thing was rushing, obviously. So if we move on, let's take a look at the defense, because it was interesting in this game. Arkansas, look, Ole Miss has been pretty good on, protecting the quarterback, honestly, which is great to see, because usually that's been a weakness of theirs. And as far as I can remember in the history of Ole Miss, usually I always made this joke that an Ole Miss quarterback better be able to run because they're going to be running for their lives as soon as that ball snapped. But Arkansas only managed 2 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. For Ole Miss, 5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. Of course, Drunk and Saunders had the 2 interceptions for the Rebels. One of those being the game-sealing interception, picking off K.J. Jefferson right there late in the fourth quarter to basically allow them to run the timeout and go on out with a victory, a good SEC victory. And that was that game. Ole Miss is 5-1, 2-1 in the conference. They still have a chance. They've got to have a lot of things happen. Of course, Alabama couldn't lose this week. Texas A&M just had to get the victory, or Texas A&M had to blow it, I should say, and give Alabama the victory. So Ole Miss is they're still looking for some things to happen. They still have a long road ahead of them. They have the bye week this week, and then they'll come back week 8 to play Auburn in Jordan-Hare. It's not ever easy when you have to go down there and play. It'd be interesting to see facing former coach Hugh Freeze in that ball game. Should be a good one to watch. That's going to be a night game, 6 o'clock ESPN. Never easy to play there, but look, I have no doubt that everybody will be healthy, and they should be able to hold themselves. They should be able to build on this momentum. It's exciting for the fan base. And for Arkansas, they're looking for answers because all they have is questions. Just like for Mississippi State, a team like a Mississippi State, just like a Texas A&M, there's a lot of questions. It's like Florida. There's a lot of questions these fan bases are wanting to know. What Arkansas is, I don't know. What do they need to do? They just need more playmakers. K.J. Jefferson should be a lot better than he is, and he's not. And it's really embarrassing because he's such a star, honestly. He's a big, physical quarterback, and he just doesn't have enough weapons around him to combo that. There's absolutely no rushing game. And there's some receivers out there, but, I mean, who do they really have? You got Rocket Sanders, the leading rusher, and one of the leading receivers in this game. And that wasn't even that much. He only caught the ball 3 times. Ty Washington scored 2 touchdowns. But what do they have? What do they have on defense? They've got to be able to they got to just be able to make more big plays, and they can't do that. They haven't been able to do that. It's tough for them. They're 0-3 in conference. They might as well just hang it up this year. Hopefully they can make it to a bowl game. That would be good for them, at least to give them a little bit of hope, a little bit of enjoyment as they look into the future for bigger and better things. That's just tough. Let's move on quickly here. Kentucky and Georgia. This is one that I really wanted to mention here. Actually, let's look at LSU and Missouri first, and we'll end on Georgia and Kentucky. LSU and Missouri. LSU number 23, Missouri number 21. So basically, LSU wins this game 49-39. It's kind of close. Missouri gets a big lead in the first quarter by 15 points to LSU 7, and they both score 10 in the second. They go into halftime. Missouri's got 25, and LSU got 17, but then they come out, and LSU starts scoring. They score 10 in the third, 22 points in the fourth quarter, and they beat Missouri 49-39. Like I said, Florida, they need wins like this. This is a big win for them. More of this, especially if they don't want to be looking for a new coach again. Because I say new coach. Look, here's the thing. Here's the deal. Here's how it works. And we've seen this at LSU. They fired coaches mid-season. They fired coaches less than 2 years after winning a national championship. And the ceiling was already very high for Kelly. And these fans are going to expect that every year. They're going to expect success at the highest level. They're 4-2, 3-1 in the conference. They're not going to win the West this year. There's going to have to be some drastic, dramatic, incredible miracles that are going to have to happen. But can they salvage a great season? They still can. Let's look at the passing. Jaden Daniels still proving that he's an absolute star. 15-21, 259 yards, 3 touchdowns, 12.3 average yards per attempt, 97.1 was his quarterback rating. Brady Cook from Missouri was 30-47, 411 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Rushing, Logan Diggs for LSU, 24 carries, 134 yards, and 1 touchdown. Jaden Daniels had 15 carries, 130 yards, and 1 touchdown. Cody Schrader for Missouri had 13 carries, 114 yards, and 3 touchdowns. His longest was 52. For receiving, Malik Neighbors, 6 receptions, 146 yards, and a touchdown. Brian Thomas Jr., 4 receptions, 66 yards, and a touchdown. And Mason Taylor, 4 receptions, 27 yards, 1 touchdown for LSU. On the other sideline, the other side of the field, Luther Burden III, 11 receptions, 149 yards, no touchdowns. His longest was 42. And Theo Weiss Jr., 4 receptions, 80 yards, 1 touchdown. On defense, each team had 2 sacks apiece. LSU had 5 tackles for loss. Missouri had 3 tackles for loss. LSU got 2 interceptions, and Missouri had none. LSU fumbled the ball twice. Missouri fumbled the ball twice, but they did not lose the ball on either or any of those fumbles. So for Missouri, like I said before, look, they and Kentucky both have losses against big SEC teams. Are they going to win the East? Probably not. You're not going to bring a Georgia down. But, hey, look, the battle for second, I'm telling you, still on for the East. You got Georgia 1. Kentucky, Missouri is going to battle it out for the East. I'm telling you, I just do not have any faith in Tennessee. I just don't. I don't. But we'll see. They've got some big games, and they can prove me wrong. And I'd love it if they could do that. Let's move on. The last game, what I wanted to mention a minute ago, Georgia and Kentucky, the number 1 team in the nation, the defending national champions, the back-to-back national champions, Georgia Bulldogs coming into the game against the Kentucky Wildcats. Number 20 ranked Kentucky Wildcats. They're a contender in the East, like I just mentioned. Georgia gets a huge win, 51-13. Wasn't even close. I said this was going to be a statement for Kentucky, and Georgia embarrassed them, embarrassed me for that matter, for even thinking that Kentucky could have any sliver of a chance to do anything in this game. But let's just tell you, if you could see the stat sheet that I've got here, and I'll put it up to the camera. All right, this right here is Georgia's, all their rushing and some of their receiving to Kentucky's. All right. Kentucky was absolutely one-dimensional at best, and you cannot be one-dimensional if you want to beat Georgia. Ray Davis was the star. He ran all over that Florida Gators team. Couldn't do anything. 15 carries, 59 yards, no touchdowns. Let's look at the quarterback play. Devin Leary for Kentucky, it was 10-26, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. Carson Beck, 28-35, 389 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did throw 1 pick. He's playing well. He's got a great team around him. Again, I told you Ray Davis is rushing, 15 carries, 59 yards. McLean for Kentucky had 4 carries, 21 yards. For Georgia, their top 2 rushing leaders were Dajon Edwards, 9 carries, 54 yards. Kendall Mitten, 8 carries, 47 yards, 1 touchdown. Receiving, this is where This is where the plays happened. All right. For Kentucky, you had Dane Key, 3 receptions, 65 yards, no touchdowns. Ray Davis, 2 receptions, 36 yards, 1 touchdown. And Josh Caddis, 2 receptions, 11 yards, 1 touchdown. For Georgia, however, Brock Bowers, the absolute stud that he is at tight end there, 7 receptions, 132 yards, 1 touchdown. His longest was 49. Marcus Rosemead, Jack Saint, 4 receptions, 99 yards, 1 touchdown. Ra Thomas, 5 receptions, 63 yards, 1 touchdown. Daijun Edwards, 6 receptions, 51 yards, no touchdowns for him. Oscar Delp, 2 receptions, 12 yards, 1 touchdown. And as we look at the defensive play in this game, Georgia had 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. Kentucky had no sacks, but had 5 tackles for loss. Kentucky did get that 1 interception on Carson Beck, but when it comes to fumbles, they were pretty clean, each team. Georgia just manhandled them, though. They manhandled them. Nothing short of a manhandling right there in Athens, Georgia. So we'll see what Kentucky can do. Georgia, they just continue on trucking on down the road. And obviously, we'll get into Week 7, and we'll preview that here soon, later in the week. Again, there's a bye week for Ole Miss, but there's still some good games on the dock. But basically that's it right there. That is your SEC recap. But let's talk about a couple things before we leave. Number one, that blunder at Miami, Miami Gardens. I don't know. I'm sure that there's going to be a name to it. It's going to have a name because a blunder like that deserves a name. I don't know. The blunder in the Miami Gardens. I don't know. Let's get some hashtags going on for that right there. But basically, Mario Cristobal comes to Miami a few years ago from Oregon, and they pay him a bunch of money because they want to win. They want to be back. They want to do and have the success that they've had in prior years, right? So they get into this game here. We're fast forwarding way ahead of what I just said. They play Georgia Tech. All right. And they're winning the game late in the fourth quarter. They have the ball back. They can run the clock out like any team would from Pee Wee level all the way up to the NFL. You would do what you can to run that clock out. They have a first down. They choose to run the ball. They're running the ball. They're not taking a knee. An automatic thing in the NFL. Now, why Cristobal chose to do this, I have no clue. That's pretty careless. Now, again, if this fumble doesn't happen, and if you look back at the replays, a lot of people seem to think that it was not a fumble. Go look it up and you tell me. But however, you put your players in that situation. You know, in the NFL, the victory formation is very important. They will not take a risk. You do not take risks in the NFL. You have, and it's, in college, some victory formations are under center. Some of them are in the shotgun formation. They have a lot of different looks. In the NFL, it's basically quarterback under center, wide running back, fullback, or 2 players right there beside him, maybe a tight end, a receiver, whoever it may be right there, within a couple feet of him, basically guarding him. And then about 8 to 10 yards behind the quarterback is the running back way back there, just in case anything crazy happens. He's the last line of defense, because you never know. You could fumble the snap. There could be any number of things. But basically, you're playing as conservative as you possibly can in that moment because you're trying to win the game. You're trying to get that clock, run that clock out. So what does Miami do when they have this in their hands? They're, and they're winning the game. They got the ball back late in the fourth quarter. What do? They run the ball. They fumble the ball. Georgia Tech gets the ball back in a very short amount of time. They throw it. They get a touchdown. They beat Miami in a heartbreak on a failed attempt at whatever that was for Mario Cristobal. I hate that for Miami fans, honestly. That is a terrible way to lose a game. Terrible way to lose a game. I mean, that's... I feel for you, but you got to put that behind you, fans. I mean, that was ridiculous. That was an absolute blunder there. I really can't say much more about it. But, I just had to mention that. But, I want to circle back around. And right before, and this is the last thing for the show today, I want to talk back about Oklahoma and Texas coming into the SEC. We know in 2024 they're coming with open arms. They're going to be welcome with open arms. But, something that I've been thinking is, people say Texas and Oklahoma are, they're going to come and they're going to be middle of the road in the SEC. Well, I don't know that. They enter the SEC, I think they're going to do great. They're going to fit in a lot better than, like, say, a Missouri did. Texas A&M, thanks to a Johnny Manziel, they really was able to fit in really early. Now, Missouri has struggled some. They did make it to the SEC East Championship, or the SEC Championship. They won the East that one year, which applaud them for that. But I think Texas and Oklahoma will fit in well. They're still technically in the footprint. You're just stretching the footprint just a little ways. But I was thinking about this morning. You have the Big Ten. Think about the Big Ten as they are. You have Ohio State, you have Michigan, you have Penn State, and then who else is there? Really, like, what's the other competition? You got UCLA and USC coming next year. I believe it's next year. I'll bring that conference up. You have the Big Ten. Like I just said, you have the Big 12. Texas and Oklahoma. You've got Colorado's in there now, or are they? They're coming back to the Big 12. Excuse me. ACC used to be just a Clemson. That used to be their conference, and it was Clemson, a huge gap, and then the rest of them. But now, look, since Clemson Dabo wants to be whatever he wants to be. He wants to be stubborn, ignorant, pretentious. What other words can I use? Anyway. Now you have a lot of other teams. You got a Florida State, which is up there really high. You got a Miami that, look, they had this blunder, but they're still way up there high. You got a Duke that's not bad. Had some good wins this year. Had game day. And the ESPN primetime game in their stadium. North Carolina's not bad. Boston College almost beat that Florida State team that I just mentioned. They're beating up on each other. That makes me happy when I see that, because I like the competition in the SEC. Everybody beats up on themselves, and then when they get to the playoff, they face a team from another conference that has kind of had an easy road, a fairly easy road. Pac-12, I don't even know what the Pac-12 is going to be. You have an Oklahoma State team that's not doing bad, a Washington State team that's not doing bad. USC, they're managing to continue to make it. They squeaked by one again Saturday. But, hey, that's how it is. And maybe this movement in these conferences are going to, that's what's going to really even out the playing field more, because when you think about it, like, well, look, I don't want anybody to have an easy road. If you want to go to the playoff, if you want to go to the championship, you've got to earn it, right? And look, we've got the 12-team playoff coming. That's exciting. That's really exciting. I mean, I'm looking forward to that. A lot of people aren't, but I am. It gives you more of a chance to win. Now, are the same 4 teams going to end up in there? The same pool of 4 or 5 colleges and be the ones to play in that championship game? Well, that may be so. Maybe so. But you give more chance to these schools that otherwise may not ever have that chance. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. All that you guys do just by listening, watching, listening, however you may be doing that. We appreciate it. We love watching college football. We love talking about college football. And there's some great stuff up ahead. Week 7. We're over halfway to the end of the season. We're in October. It's fall. You feel that chill in the air at night, in the morning? It's football season. It's football weather. It's getting football weather. Now, I don't know where you live, but it may be snowing where you live. I don't know. And I know here in the southeast, you've got that cool night, cool morning thing going on. Now, it's still 80-something degrees in the day. You got to run your heat in the morning and your AC wide open, going home from work at the end of the day. We love it. My name's Brendan Taylor. You've been watching Ride Along Sports. You've been listening to Ride Along Sports. Stay tuned. This is your Week 6 recap. We got Week 7 preview coming in just a few days. For Zach Ainsworth, wherever he is right now, just loving life, being a father. My name is Brandon Taylor. This is Ride Along Sports. Thank you again so much. Peace, everybody, and God bless.